Hello, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me. We'll be checking our presenters' mics in just a moment. And we are very happy to have you here at our second session, or actually third session or fourth session. Anyway, we have a lot of sessions today. We are running the Education USA Virtual Fair 2021. There are a lot of participants. There are a lot of universities that are presenting and talking to you today. So make sure that you use this opportunity to the max. We are talking today during this live about the application process. So we just talked about undergraduate education, general admissions. We'll talk more today about application documents, about essays. There will be a separate topic, but you can also ask letters of recommendation, any tips. There were a lot of questions about activities, what will help you to get into colleges. So about all these things we will talk today. My name is Elena Mikhailova. I'm an Education USA advisor for Belarus, and I will be moderating today our live panel. And today we have on our panel from Illinois Institute of Technology, Claire Johnson, from Rice University, James Atkins, and from University of Oregon, Alfredo Varela. I think it will be a good time right now for you to introduce yourself, to say a couple words about your institutions, maybe one thing that you're excited for during this fair, like what is your highlight or what you're expecting to get. And then we will move to our questions and discussion of the application process to undergraduate degrees. So Claire, you can go first.
Sure, thank you, Elena. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. Hi there, everyone. I'm Claire Johnson. I'm a senior international mission counselor with the Illinois Institute of Technology. Illinois Tech is located in Chicago, Illinois, so in the Midwest United States, and we are a STEM-focused university. So most students are studying in computer science, technology, engineering. We also have very strong architecture and business programs as well. And we do offer scholarships to international students that are merit-based. So if you're a student looking for STEM-related programs, we are the place for you. So I'm excited to chat to you a little more today about our admission process. And I think my favorite part so far about this fair has just been how excited students have been at the booth to learn more and really think about their studies for their studies in the United States.
Thank you, James.
All right, is this working?
Yeah.
Awesome, great. Hi, everyone. My name is James Atkins. I serve as Deputy Director for Enrollment Marketing and Communications at Rice University in beautiful Houston, Texas. We are in the largest city in the south of the United States. And that affords us a lot of resources to our students. And so when we are looking for research opportunities or full-time jobs or internships, those all exist right outside our gates. We're a small private university, just 4,000 undergraduates. We're primarily known as a STEM institution, but we have some of the nation's top programs in social sciences, as well as business and music and architecture. So really anything you're looking for, I imagine we have. We're best known for our student life. The way we do residential life here is through our residential colleges. It's similar to Hogwarts and Harry Potter. And so one of the things that I have enjoyed so far about the fair is just getting to know students and understanding what they're looking for in an international experience when they come to the US. And this is my first international fair of this kind. And so this is a lot of fun for me. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Alfredo.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Okay. So first I want to thank our host, Education USA. They're a great resource for any international student looking to study in the United States. Please visit their office, use the resources. It's a great opportunity. Second, I come from the University of Oregon. We're located on the West Coast in the city of Eugene. It's a great community, very safe and secure. University of Oregon is a bit larger. It's about total 25,000 students, with about 20,000 of those undergraduate students, another 5,000 graduate students. We have over 160 programs. So whatever your interest, we are a comprehensive university. We have one of the top business schools in the nation and in the world. We offer great scholarships for international students, both automatic scholarships based on your academics and other scholarships you can apply for and combine. So we offer a comprehensive financial aid package, including work study for students coming to our campus. I love the fair. I've talked to some great students. It's really exciting to see so many people interested in coming to the United States, and we hope we can come out and visit you soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we already got some great questions specifically about application package. And I love the questions about activities. There was a question about how minimum activities or how many activities honors do you think a person should have in their application. Earlier in the past live, there was a question about what type of activities would you like to see in your, like from a student when he or she is applying. So if you can give like an advice on how many activities and what type of activities should a student mention in their application, please share. You can go in any order.
Whoever is ready.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And for us at Illinois Tech, we don't have a minimum required number of activities that we prefer to see on an application. What's most important for us is that we can see that a student has been committed over a few years to maybe a couple, 2 to 3 activities, and really shown leadership involvement with those activities, and really delve deeply to be very involved and committed to whatever that activity is, whether it's robotics club or art club, whatever it might be. So we don't want to see that a student has been involved in 20 to 30 different things. It's more depth over breadth, if that makes sense. It can be helpful to see if a student's been involved in a club or organization that's related to the major that they're applying for, because this shows us that a student has some experience in the field and a genuine interest, but that's not necessarily required either. Again, it's really what we're wanting to see. A student has shown that commitment to some type of club or organization over a few years.
I agree completely with what Claire says. I think that it's important to show some commitment over a number of years, not just being a member of a club. It is good to take on some leadership opportunity within the organization, not only on campus, but also off campus, doing volunteer work, showing that you're interested in helping others. Here at the University of Oregon, our mascot is the duck, and we call ourselves the Ducks. So we like to know that you're going to be a good member of our flock and of our community. So we look for students that are willing to give back, are looking to be participants, not just members. And so I think it's good to emphasize that when you talk about your club or extracurricular activities.
I imagine this goes for all 3 of our institutions and most that you would be considering in the US, but we understand that the last year and a half especially have been crazy and a lot of activities have been shut down. And so what we're hoping to see is that you've still found a way to pursue something that interests you, if that's doing independent research at home or just something about that passion that you have for what you want to study. That's what we really want to see, that you are someone who takes advantage of resources available to you and that seeks out opportunities to learn.
Thank you. Let's move to another great question about transcripts. So the question was, of course, our system, our schools, they have different systems as schools in the US, and they are all different among each other as well. So when a student is getting a transcript from their school, how should he, with the counselor, prepare it? Should it be translated? Should it be verified by the notary when they're sending it to you, or or is it not required?
Can I start? So each institution is separate, is different, and each will have their own different requirements regarding the submission of your transcripts. So I'll just let you know what we do at the University of Oregon. We have a number of different systems. If your school resembles an American education system, we do have a self-reporting form, so you can fill out your grades yourself on the form. We also do accept unofficial transcripts directly from you, either emailed to us or submitted to the application portal. We will accept these for review for admission. They should be in English, but they don't have to be on our grading system. We will do a grade evaluation in our office and convert those to our GPA system. Before you enroll, we will require a set of an official transcripts. And what we consider official transcripts are any transcripts that are sent directly from your high school to us directly via email or through one of the electronic systems that we would provide. So that covers it for us. And I think everybody else might have it a little bit different.
Yeah, for us, it's similar. So we do need official transcripts during the admission process. We don't accept unofficial transcripts. And if these original transcripts are not in English, we'll need an official translation as well. And that needs to be a translation from an official translating organization. So we wouldn't accept it if it's translated by a student themselves. And then in terms of evaluations, we don't require transcript evaluations for students applying from high school. We will review those transcripts based on the educational and grading system that the student is coming from, and do our own evaluation within our office. If a student is transferring from a university in another country outside of the US and is planning to continue their studies at Illinois Tech, we will need a official valuation for those university transcripts, along with the translation and the official documents.
And Rice University is actually very similar to Illinois Tech in all of those. So same applies.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And we also get a lot of the questions. Thank you very much for especially asking questions about application documents and elements. We already talked about activities. We already talked about transcripts. And as you could understand, students who are watching us, all universities in the US, all colleges and institutions are different. There are more than 4,500 accredited institutions. And there is no unified application system. There's Coalition App, there's Common App, but then there are separate systems of applying. That's why application documents, application requirements will be different from one college to another. Those of you who are asking about maximum TOEFL scores or other test scores, this is a good question to ask specifically the representative. So make sure that you find the college that you're interested in and ask them this question today at the fair. So all the applications are different. We talked about activities and transcripts. What are other elements? What are other most common documents the students need to prepare when they apply to US institutions, if we talk in general, to undergraduate programs?
Yeah, I can start with that one. So again, every university is going to be different in terms of what they require, but generally speaking, most universities will need to receive the application, the transcripts. A letter of recommendation is often required. And so for us at Illinois Tech, we require one letter of recommendation. Some universities will need 2 to 3 letters, some won't need any. So it's just going to depend. And we are test optional right now, which does mean that SAT and ACT scores are not required. Some universities have never required those scores. Some have gone test optional because of the pandemic, and others still require test scores. So it's going to depend on the university. And then most universities will also require English proficiency scores as well, which tends to be TOEFL and IELTS, but more and more universities are also accepting Duolingo. So just make sure to check that which universities you're applying for, which English proficiency scores they will need from you and what their minimum required scores are. At Illinois Tech, we accept TOEFL, IELTS, and Duolingo, so any of those will meet our requirement.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I just want to follow up. I think it's right. Check out what each university is offering. Each one is different. I think a lot of the admission requirements have expanded in terms of some of the things that Claire mentioned, being test optional, accepting different English language proficiency scores, including sometimes things like IB programs, or if you have taken the SAT or ACT, even though the University of Oregon is test optional, we will review those, and depending on your English score, we will provide the waiver for the English language proficiency. Also, just to cover generally, I think first of all, your application, make sure you fill out your application very carefully, regardless of whether you do the Common App or the Coalition App, or you apply directly to your university. Make sure the information is correct. You use a good email address that you're going to be getting communications from, because if the email bounces back, you're going to miss a lot of important information. I think also your essay. Please review your essay very carefully. Write a couple drafts. Make sure you have somebody else look at it to check for punctuation and English grammar mistakes. And please tell us who you are, why you're interested in the institution you're applying to, why you're interested in that major, and give us some insight into who you are as a person. And I know there's another session about that, but I just want to mention that here because I think it's important to provide some consideration regarding that important piece of your application.
Thank you,
If I could just add on really quick, I loved what Alfredo just said about really taking the time to make sure your essays are really strong and showing who you are as a person, because we want to know what your unique qualities are that you're going to bring to our community outside of just your grades and what we can see on transcripts and test scores. But the other thing that I think it's important to include as well is if you're a student who's applying to something like architecture or art or music, you may be asked to include a portfolio to give a sample of works you've completed, or it might be paintings or ceramics. For some theater or music programs, you might also have to do an audition or send in a sample of a song you wrote or something. So please make sure that if you're applying to programs like that, that you're aware of any additional requirements for those types of portfolios or samples of your works. And even if they don't necessarily require them, but have it as an option, I would say send it in, because again, it shows who you are as a person and what unique background and experience you have.
Thank you. I also noted another question that was kind of interesting. Is the job experience considered as an advantage of when applying? And does the age of freshman applicant matters in admissions? So what can you note on that?
So a job experience can be very helpful. Both if it's related to what your interests are academically and in terms of your major. If you have that kind of background, you have a head start among some of your peers, but also if it indicates some kind of financial hardship. If you worked and weren't able to do other activities because you have to support your family, you have to help out, it's important to indicate that. It's important that we understand that, because if we're looking for you to be involved in clubs and activities, and we don't see that, but we see you working, 30 hours a week because you're helping to support your family, that will be very important for us to know. So I think that, yes, job experience can be very important and helpful depending on the situation.
James, maybe you have anything to add on that?
Sure. I think the other part of the question was about the age of the applicant. It doesn't necessarily matter, I would say, to most institutions how old you are. What will matter for some, perhaps, is whether you are a first degree seeking student or a second degree seeking student. So there are some schools like Rice, we're a first degree institution. And so if you already have a bachelor's degree from an institution, you're not eligible to apply for undergraduate admission here. So we focus on students pursuing their first degree. We offer graduate programs, but not a second undergraduate major. You'll want to explore the institution's policies to be sure that what you're pursuing is actually possible for you. But as far as the specific question about the age, it doesn't necessarily matter. What matters most to us is that you submit all your materials and you're thorough in getting all those boxes checked.
I would only add, oh, sorry, go ahead, Claire.
Sorry about that. I was just going to say I agree with what both James and Alfredo said, and what I would add on is, while we're not going to disadvantage a student because they're a certain age versus another age, what we will be paying attention to is how long it's been since a student's been in high school or another degree program. And if it's been 5 to 10 years and now they're coming back for their first degree or their second degree, we'll maybe wonder if the student's kind of ready to get back into an academic setting, if they're prepared, or if it's been quite a while, and perhaps it would be helpful for them to take some prerequisites at a community college or another program in their home country before transferring in or starting a program at Illinois Tech, because our programs are very rigorous and students do need to be sufficiently prepared and in an academic mindset to really be successful and thrive in our environment. So that's one thing to think about too. We may not, deny you based on your certain age, but we may say, hey, why don't you start out with some prerequisites to kind of build that foundation so that when you do apply and come into Illinois Tech, you're going to be, ready to go and be successful.
Yeah, and just on the other end, if you think you're a little young, okay, generally, again, you're doing well, you graduated early, we generally will accept you, but there may be some additional requirements in order to ensure your safety and security, because most of us are residential campuses. So we want to make sure that we can support you as a student. So if you are a little younger than most of our students, it's good to let us know, and so we can help to prepare those support systems for you.
Thank you very much. And I see a lot of questions about scholarships, about tests. We will have, I think, in the next, in about 40 minutes, you just need to check on the platform. There will be a session on financing your education, and later there will be a session on tests. Still, there is one question that I would like to highlight. The question was, although SAT is mostly optional, does having SAT scores enhance chances of getting bigger scholarships? And I would add, of being admitted in general. So when a student sees SAT optional, should they still try and pass SAT or ACT and present those scores to get more chances to get a scholarship or be admitted? Or they can concentrate on other elements of the application, because we know how much time the filling out the application, preparing a document takes. What do you think about this? What about the SAT optional and presenting it?
That's a good question, and it's very much going to depend on each institution, because some universities might say they are test optional for admission, but for a student to be considered for scholarship, they'll be required to submit SAT or ACT scores. And so for those types of universities, a student would have an advantage to submit SAT or ACT scores so that they can be considered for scholarships. However, for my institution, Illinois Tech, we are test optional for the admission process and for scholarships. So, every student is going to be reviewed equally for admission and for scholarships, no matter if they submit an SAT, ACT score or not. If a student has the chance and the opportunity to take one of those exams, I always say, do it and submit those scores, because it'll be another piece in the puzzle of seeing who you are as an applicant. And, that's always helpful during the admission process to be able to look at not only just grades and transcripts, but also test scores, extracurricular involvement, and all of those items.
Yeah, there's a great emphasis on test scores being the one thing that admission decisions hang on, and that's, I think, what you'd find at most institutions not the case. In most cases, actually, whatever your test score may be is not so far off of your academic performance in high school. It's not usually a surprise. And so it can be helpful to have that information. More information is always better in contextual and holistic evaluations. And at each institution, you should be able to find their mid 50% range of admitted students or deposited students, what they earned on their test scores. I would generally say, if you worked hard to prepare for the standardized test and you're proud of your score, no matter what it is, you should share it. There's no reason not to. I wouldn't worry about that being the reason that you would be admitted or denied.
Yeah, I would just add, I can tell you a great example. of where a test score might come in helpful. Because of COVID, I had a student who their academic record was kind of interrupted, and they have a couple semesters where they didn't do as well as they had been doing in the past. So their overall GPA was hurt quite a bit, but they took the SAT and they got a great score. So they got almost 1,400 on the SAT. And so they were able to demonstrate that even though they had this kind of blip in their academic record, they were still a very strong student. And so where it can support or add something, I would say submit those scores. And if you think you're going to do well on the test, then go ahead and take it. But so many schools are test optional now. I would base it on the schools you're applying to. And I think there's a session on choosing the right school for you. So that might help you as well.
Yeah, and a quick follow-up on that, several students asked, what if the test results are not good? What if they passed the test, indicated to your college as the one who will receive the scores, and then they get results, the school was test optional, but the test results are very low? What's then? Can't they kind of write and say, don't consider my scores, I passed, I did badly? What do they do in this situation?
Each application is different, and I believe on the Common App there is an opportunity to say test optional, or I'm choosing to apply test optional. I know on our direct application we have that, so you can indicate that on the application. Also, I think this gets back to the larger question of the holistic review. All of our institutions really look at everything as a huge piece. And in some cases, for example, in our cases, we don't even look at the SAT or ACT scores unless there's a real reason to. So if you have a good academic record and we're going to accept you, we may look at those scores if there's, we need a little more information and we want to follow up on something. But if your academic record is strong, your essay is strong, your application is good, we'll accept you, and we may not even look at those scores.
Thank you.
Yeah,
But they can't. Yeah.
Well, sorry. Oh, I would agree with what Alfredo said, saying that, we do review everything holistically. So, it might not be necessary to look at SAT, ACT scores. And on the Common App, you can indicate if you don't want to submit test scores. So that's fine. And yeah, if you took the test and you weren't exactly happy with your scores, and it's a test optional university you're applying to, then there's no reason to submit those scores, and we'll review you as an applicant based on your academic background, on your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, your involvement in activities, and your essays.
Thank you. While we already mentioned holistic application review, so a lot of universities and colleges in the US apply this principle of holistic document review. What does it mean? What does it mean for international students? I don't know, maybe James, we can start with you now.
Sure. What does contextual review mean? Holistic review?
Holistic, yeah.
It means that we're going to look at every single thing you submit. There are some institutions that define it a little bit differently or practice it a little bit differently, where they look at everything you submit, but it's really hanging on maybe a piece or two. But most institutions, I would say, are going to really talk about you as a whole person. That's the whole file. Holistic review is what that all means. So we want to know that, sure, maybe you're not a 1600 with a 5.0 out of 4.0 scale. And that's not necessarily what all of us need. But what we want to know is that we're enrolling a student who can do the work, who will be involved on campus, and ultimately will look good on us. We want people who will graduate from our programs and go do great things and be successful in life. And so that's what we're looking for through all of the pieces you submit, not just the academic or testing, letters of recommendation, the essays. All of those things come together to paint a full picture of you. And that's what holistic review means.
Okay, anybody would like to add anything? I think it was a good explanation of what a holistic review is. And there were questions about high GPA and tests. Yes, they're important, but also remember that US colleges and institutions look at you as the overall person. So you can boost your application if you write a really good essay or you have a really good letter of recommendation, even if you do not get such a good TOEFL score, for example, or SAT score. But it works all differently for all institutions. Coming back to activities, I also see a lot of questions about that, and a lot of questions there about Olympiads. So Olympiads, I don't know if it is, if you heard, if you saw that in the international students applications, there's academic competitions that are happening in our countries, and they happen on different levels: school level, regional level, then country level, and then there are international Olympiads. So a lot of students who are applying, at least from our region, they present this as their academic achievement. They are highly involved. It takes a lot of time to prepare. How Olympiads are, if you came across such activity, how they are reviewed from your side, how important are them, and the follow-up to that, academic versus extracurricular non-academic activities. What is more important? So Olympiads and academic versus non-academic.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can say from the Olympiads perspective, we'll consider it, just as any other activity. So, it's great to see that a student has been really committed to doing the best they can in those Olympiads and put a lot of time and effort into it. And, we love to see that, but it's not going to be where Olympiads is viewed more highly than, say, volunteering at an orphanage or something. So we like to see, again, that a student has been involved in something outside of their classes and they've really committed to it. And at least for us at Illinois Tech, if a student's done robotics Olympiads or something related to that and wants to go into mechanical engineering, that'll be great to see that they have some experience in the field and a genuine interest for it. And again, have committed a lot of time and effort to really developing their skills there. So, that's great. If students been involved in Olympiads, include that on their application. And we want to see it. And what was the second part of the question? Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, and compared to this as academic achievements, what is more important, academic or non-academic? And also a follow-up to that, volunteering. How important is that?
Yeah. So in terms of academic versus non-academic, again, as all three of us have said, the holistic review process is important. So we're going to be looking at the academics, non-academics, volunteering, everything when we're making that decision. But I will say, it's still important that a student has the academic background and preparation to go into university. So, for example, if someone is applying to engineering and they've failed every math and physics class, well, that's not a good indication for us that a student is ready to be successful in our program. So, in that case, it may be more a question of perhaps this is not the best fit program and you'd be better off, in another one at our university. And so we look at different options there. It's not just a closed door. In terms of volunteering, that's great to see as well. If a student's really committed to being a volunteer for an organization and, giving back to their community, we love to see that. And that will be, reviewed along with any other extracurricular involvement when we're looking at everything holistically.
Yeah, I would only add that there are over 4,000 universities and colleges in the United States. And as an international admissions advisor and looking at these, there are many different types of academic systems across the world. We don't know everything. So if you're involved in something that you think is important at a national or international level, educate us a little bit. Make sure we understand how important this is, how much time, excuse me, you had to spend preparing to participate, so we can evaluate your commitment. And I would also say, this gets back to the question of best fit. Again, there's a session on choosing your university. So it's not just about what major you want or what location you want, but who's going to value you and what you're interested in as a student and as a person. And you may be doing things that you're really involved in and you're really passionate about, but the institution may be looking for something different. So that's a good aspect to consider when you're thinking about fit.
Thank you. And I really love how you mentioned about educating you, just like I did right now, right? Explained briefly what it is, what is the level, how many, when we're working with students on giving them advice on how to report the activities, we say, provide a context, provide a scale. If you were number 3, but out of 10,000 people, it is one scale. If you were number 3 out of 4 contestants, that's another story, right? It's not maybe that much of achievement. So yeah, make sure that like Olympiads in our countries work differently and seen differently in other parts of the world, to make sure that you provide this context briefly. I had some other questions noted about GPA. Usually, do students need to report previous 4 years GPA if, for example, they had like low GPA in their like 8th grade out of their 11th grades, and then it improved? Or should they report only their current GPA, current year's GPA?
Every university is going to be a little different in terms of how many years of grades they need to see. Some universities will need to see, middle school and high school, so going all the way back to 7th grade through 11th grade, whatever it might be. For us at Illinois Tech, we do need to see transcripts with at least 3 years of grades on them. And if a student had a semester or a year where maybe they had some personal issues going on and perhaps struggled academically and grades went down, what we'll look to see is that a student worked really hard to improve and persevered and had an upward trend of improvement. So, don't be afraid about, 1 year or semester's worth of lower grades, as long as you committed yourself to improving your academics and worked really hard to bring that back up. So that's what we want to see. We want to see that trend of improvement. But in terms of the numbers of years of grades, we do need to see 3, so you won't be able to not submit a year of grades just because you feel it wasn't your academic best year, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We have about 10 minutes, so if you have any application-related questions, please write them, because questions about medical studies, questions about COVID policy, these are great questions. You can ask them directly from university representatives at their booth. We can't talk about them during this topic. So a couple other things I really wanted to cover: letters of recommendation. So it is always a challenge. A lot of students ask for letters of recommendations, and teachers do not speak English or do not understand. Where do they click? What do they do? They need help, or they say, oh, go write yourself, I don't understand. So in this situation, what do they do? Should a student translate the letter of recommendation? I know the answer is no. But how do students deal with that? How do they request a letter of recommendation from somebody who is not speaking English? How do they ensure that the letter of recommendation is good? Whoever, I don't know, who would like to start on that?
Yeah, I can start with that one. So we will need a translation of the letter of recommendation if it's the writer doesn't speak English, and it will need to be an official translation. So, ATA translators is one that we recommend to students. So that can be an option. And in terms of what the letter of recommendation's content should be, we don't have a specific template that we need students to include on that letter of recommendation. But what I always say to students is, whoever is writing that letter, especially if they're not familiar with the letter of recommendation process, it's always helpful for them to talk about their relationship with you as a student, in terms of how they interacted with you in class, what your strengths were academically, and if you really persevered to work through a difficult course. So it's much more helpful for us to see that they've written specifically about you and your achievements versus just a generic letter. So really make sure that whoever you're asking to write your letter of recommendation, that they can say something genuine and authentic about you. And that they know you fairly well as a person. And it can be, a teacher, a school counselor, the leader of a club or student organization that you were a member of, an employer at a part-time job or an internship. Any of those are perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, I think everything Claire said was correct. Again, this gets back to checking the requirements for each institution. We don't require letters of recommendation, but they're helpful when they add something to your overall application and tell us something additional about you. And again, don't focus simply on academic letters of recommendation. Always good to get more of the personal side, especially if it's somebody prominent in your community or somebody that can really say something about you as an individual and who you are and what you contributed as a student and as a person.
And James, somebody just got surprised that Rice University acceptance rate is 9% and super shocked. So this is great that you're learning about institutions. Make sure that you talk to James, Alfredo, and Claire and other representatives today at the fair. Yes, there are a lot of very competitive universities, and then there are a lot of universities who have high acceptance rates. You can find the best fit for you. You just have to educate yourself and talk to university representatives today. Other things, and I see your questions, some of them were covered. Actually, these webinars are recorded, so you can then go back and review. We talked about GPA, we talked about activities, we talked about letters of recommendation, and there will be a separate session about essays later today. So make sure that you check our agenda and visit this session. Another thing I would like to talk about are application deadlines. So there are different application deadlines, and they differ from university to university, but also there are different types of application deadlines. There's early decision, early action, there is regular decision. There are some other types of deadlines. How do they differ? What are the main things that students need to know about application deadlines, and what it means for international students and their chances to get accepted? I don't know, James, maybe we can start with you.
Sure, I'm happy to. When you're applying to U.S. universities, you may hear early action, early decision, regular decision. Each one of those early options might have an option 1 and an option 2. And so you'll want to check those out per university that you're exploring and really understand what that means, what each term means. Early decision is often binding. So when you apply somewhere, early decision, that means you are committing to go there if you are admitted. So you should be really sure when you apply there. Early action typically just means you apply early, you get a decision early, and that's it. There's no commitment. And then regular decision is the standard age-old process of just applying by usually early January. You find out maybe March or by April, and then you deposit and confirm by May 1st is the national deadline. All of those deadlines may be tweaked by a week or two between institutions. So again, you'll want to explore the policies for each one. But those are the 3 ones that you may encounter the most. And schools often offer at least 2 of those, if not all 3. So you have options on what you want to, how you want to pursue the university's application.
Yeah, I would only add that apart from the application deadlines and some of those definitions, that you also have to be aware of scholarship deadlines. So make sure that you know when the scholarship deadlines are. They're often different from the application deadlines, and you may not even be able to apply for the scholarships until you've been submitted your application or even been admitted. So it's good to understand if there are additional applications for some scholarships, depending on the program you're applying to or the major, that you make yourself aware of those and what those requirements are. Don't leave money on the table.
No, that's exactly it, Alfredo. And I was going to add on as well that sometimes universities who have an early action or early decision deadline will require that students apply by those deadlines in order to be eligible for certain scholarships. And oftentimes those scholarships are very lucrative. So they might cover the full cost of tuition or even be full ride scholarships. So that's another important thing to keep in mind when you're doing your research about universities, is looking at what those deadlines are, if there's early action, early decision, and what are the implications of applying by those deadlines. So, for us at Illinois Tech, for example, we have an early action deadline that does allow a student to be eligible for a full tuition scholarship. So as Alfredo just said, don't leave money on the table by accidentally missing a deadline. Keep everything organized on your calendar and make sure you're asking those questions when you're exploring each of the universities you're applying to.
Thank you. And speaking of money, about application fees and fee waivers, it all differs, right? Any tips on how to handle that? What are application fees and how to get a waiver?
I would just ask, sometimes the university cannot offer or won't offer a tuition application waiver, but it never hurts to ask. The more you ask, it may encourage them to change the policy. So ask.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We are actually done with this webinar. I think as a final question, I'll ask each of our panelists to say one thing they definitely do not want to see in the application of a student. So as you're thinking, one thing that can ruin the application or one thing that can ruin your impression of the student. So what students should not do, like definitely from your experience, from your perspective, and whoever goes first. James?
I can go first. We have a very fun tradition at the end very fun is up to the user, I guess. At the end of our application called the Rice Box, and students are encouraged to upload a photo of just something that represents who they are. It's not evaluative, so we're not making our decision based on this. It's just supposed to be, like I said, fun. But I can't tell you how many times we've seen students submit pictures of bowls of rice because we are rice. And so that's not a make or break. We don't admit or deny based on anything submitted there, but I will just advise you, be more creative in that section. If you're already thinking, I'll submit a picture of rice, find something else, please.
I would say that while we're interested in you as a person, I think about the fact that you're coming to the United States. It's a different culture. I think sometimes students they just don't know about certain language, terms that they might use. They may assume that everybody has a certain political view and they don't. It's good to know this about you, but just be careful about how you phrase certain things, because while it doesn't play a role in the admissions process, I think it's good to understand where you're applying to, that you're applying to be part of a community, and it's probably helpful to understand what that community is. So do some research. I would say, again, that doesn't make or break your admissions process. So in terms of something that we would not want to see, if you do include a photograph, make sure it's appropriate to the application process. Yeah, I think unless it's something that and again, that's also a judgment call. If you're a champion water skier and you want to include a photograph of that activity, it may be great, but if you're including it because you think it makes you look athletic and it doesn't really say anything else about you, we're going to wonder, why did they include this photograph as part of your application? Or why did they include this statement about something that's completely unrelated to what we're looking for?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that piece, making sure that whatever you're writing on your application or including in your application is related in some way to the program you're applying for, or you as a student, and basically relates to your academic achievements or future professional achievements. And what I would add on is also make sure you're taking time on your applications and effort, and not just writing one sentence for your essay or for the short answers, because the thing that I least like to see is when I come to the section, asking why you're applying to Illinois Tech or why you're applying to the program that you're interested in, and all the student writes is, one or two sentences that are generic and really don't show that they know anything about the program they're applying for or about our university. Obviously, you don't need to know every fact or statistic about the institutions you're applying to, but at least show that you put some time and effort and you really care and genuinely, want to study in our community. And so I think that is just important, taking that time to put in the effort to really make your application, reflect you as a person, and then also show your genuine interest in applying.
And don't cut and paste. Oftentimes I see applications say, oh, I really want to go to Rice University, and they're applying to the University of Oregon. And you know that they just using another letter for another institution. That's always like a heartbreaker, especially if you can tell they're a great student and you really want to accept them. So be careful.
Yes, thank you. Yes, read through your application, read through application requirements, application documents, ask questions. We're done with the session. Thank you very much, James, Alfredo, and Claire. There was a great conversation, great wrap up. And for students, these sessions will be available in recording, but your university representatives are now live at their booths. You have a lot of questions. Go and ask them. They are there to, they love your questions. Yeah, I think you all agree. Yes, you all love the questions. So go talk to colleges. And if you would like to join live, the next live will start in about 10 minutes. Thank you very much for your attention.